The discovery that was made on the other side of the canal here in the waste area sent a shock through the investigation team. I think we all feared that the worst would come round the corner. Julia Rawson was reported missing on the 14th of May 2019. She was reported missing by a friend, having last been seen on the Saturday late afternoon. Following her report of missing to West Midlands Police, a missing person inquiry commenced, and officers from the locate team did all those things that you would expect officers to do when they're trying to identify where a person could be. Those inquiries led to CCTV inquiries down within the town centre of Dudley, and CCTV was obtained from the Bottle and Cork public house, and within that footage Julia was seen to be in the pub on the Saturday evening, and it was at this location that she met up with the male who we now know to be Nathan Maynard-Ellis. On the morning of the 23rd of May, my team picked up the inquiry. We sat down with the locate team and those officers that had been in charge of that missing person investigation, and clearly it was a real concern of theirs that over the 2 weeks or so that they'd had this inquiry, that there was no proof of life. In Dudley Town Centre, officers local to that area, a community support officer, had seen the imagery of this male, and what was distinctive about him is that during the course of the evening in the pub, he'd rolled up his sleeves and shown Julia some quite distinctive tattoos that he had on both arms. This imagery was shown by the community support officer to people who work within Dudley Town Centre. Bearing in mind that at this stage we've still got a missing person inquiry, and this person was going to be key to that investigation. And it was during a normal day on the 22nd that a member of security contacted the community support officer to say that they thought that they had seen a male shopping within Dudley.
He's been involved in a young female that has gone missing.
We're looking for a female missing person who's been missing for about 11 days. Okay, we've got pictures on CCTV with someone that matches your description with her, so we just want to get some details from her.
11 days?
She's been missing for 11 days, so obviously we need to find her. Okay. And because you look like the person we've seen on CCTV, we just get some details from you.
I'll probably chop all my hair off.
You know, Nathan was wanting to avoid any sort of knowledge of Julia, you know, saying that he didn't think that it was him in the imagery. If he would been responsible for anything like that, then, you know, he would have taken off and he would have maybe changed his appearance. But officers, having again reviewed that CCTV, looking at the man standing in front of them, were confident enough and certainly had enough suspicion at that time to think that it was Nathan that was the man in the shot, and he was arrested at that point on suspicion of the kidnap of Julia. So, having picked up this missing person investigation and having arrested 2 individuals, I thought it was really important to come down to the scene to see the flat where they lived and the area where the block was situated. So it led me down to the canal and to this wooded area just to the right. I came down here to meet a specialist search team and took a walk along the canal. The team had already started some line searching through the wooded area to see if there was anything of interest.
When I was asked to lead on the search for Julia, and I stood at the location she was last seen, which was Mission Drive, Tipton. Within 10 metres of the door of the premises she was in, I had a canal, I had woodland, I had a disused rail line, I had tunnels, I had a large coal deposit area, I had a residential area, I had no CCTV at that point to direct me from which direction Julia may have gone from the flat.
We were able to view cameras situated along the canal, and what these cameras demonstrated is there was movement from Nathan and David's flat. During the daylight it was quite clear that it was them on that footage, walking away from the flat, on many occasions carrying carrier bags by their side, just casually walking along the canal, walking to, between the destinations that we'd become aware of quite early on in the investigation. It became apparent that at some point in the previous 2 weeks, and we believe this to have been on the Sunday, the 12th of May, that Nathan and David were present together and were present in the back garden burning items in an incinerator bin. Items of clothing that were examined and ultimately identified to have spots of blood on them, and the DNA from that blood came back as Julia's. And a breakthrough came on lifting the carpet in the living room, and underneath the underlay there was a stain found, and when this stain was tested, it tested positive for blood. So that sample was sent away so that we could identify where that blood came from. But clearly finding blood underneath carpet was a significant event within the investigation, and gave us the first indication that it was at that location that Julia came to harm.
I can tell you that the search phase lasted a total of 47 days. It sounds a long time, however, the searches were split over various areas, canals, woodland, refuse tips, self-storage units, premises, drains, and other areas.
And it was actually later on in the afternoon, having searched for most of the day, that I received a call from the search advisor to be informed that they'd made what turned out to be a very grim discovery. It was evident from their first viewing that we'd located body parts, and those parts had been found in two separate bags, sort of separated from each other over a distance of 20 so metres. As you can imagine, the search at that point was halted. The area was closed down, and experts, forensic experts, anthropologists were called upon, so that the following day we could actually examine that site in greater detail and try and ascertain exactly what had been discovered. So as part of the work looking into Nathan and David's background, clearly there were a lot of items within the flat that became a real interest to us. It became really clear that between them there was a real fascination with true life crime, serial killers, cannibalism, and things of that nature. In fact, we recovered hundreds of books from the location that just pointed towards the fact that potentially Nathan was very forensically aware, and I think this stems from an interest that he'd once taken upon doing a course around potentially forensic work.
The body parts were wrapped in black material, and they were very, very well wrapped and preserved, to the point where even on a hot summer's day there were no flies attracted to one of the areas where Julia was disposed of, where there were some body parts. So that gives you an idea. There was no scent given off for dogs to pick up on. There was no flies for us to indicate on. Ultimately, one of the body parts was exposed slightly, but you couldn't see it. Now, it was a specialist search dog that picked up on the scent from that first body part that led us to that location, which was not visible to the naked eye at all.
So unfortunately, given the state in which Julia's body was discovered and the time that had passed since she'd been killed, we were unable to ascertain what had actually been the cause of Julia's death. But the evidence that we had, with Julia's body, would be required to be presented to the court. And what we actually did and undertook was scanning of all of Julia's body. And West Midlands Police work in partnership with Warwick University in order to use their technology to obtain 3D imagery of body parts, so that they can be the evidence and the imagery that we obtain can be used within a court setting. I realise that quite a lot of the detail around what happened to Julia in her final hours and the terrible things that took place within the flat and the way in which she was treated in death and disposed of in such horrific circumstances will be absolute terrible news for the community in which these discoveries were made. You know, the family and friends of Julia have been aware of some of the detail of that, but this court trial would have brought all of this out into the open. So following a lengthy trial at Coventry Crown Court, 2 men have been jailed for their part in the killing of Julia. This was a complex investigation that involved an extensive search of an area to locate Julia's body. The sole aim of the investigation to seek justice for Julia. I hope that the result today provides some solace for Julia's family. I know that they are still grieving for her loss, but hopefully as a family unit they can move forward in their grief.
Thanks for watching Crimewatch UK. Please support our channel by subscribing, liking and maybe a comment. Don't forget to press the notification bell to keep up to date with daily content.